Hey guys, senior producer Chris McGraw here, coming at you, working from home still, though I worked from home before all this happened, so hope everyone's staying safe, staying healthy out there, staying at home, and because of all this, as I've said before, stuck at home, no travel, no trips. All the press cars are actually currently, you know what, that is a really dirty lens. One moment. Okay, sorry about that. Dirty lens, been kind of running around the backyard, shooting photos of my dog. Anyway, so no press cars, no car reviews for the foreseeable future. Hopefully this ends sooner rather than later, but stay inside, stay healthy. And I'm gonna keep making these videos. This is another behind the scenes video. If you didn't check out the first one, I'll throw the link below. Again, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, ring that bell, helps us make more videos. Thanks for watching, and let's get into it.
So we just found out that the Ford Ranger Raptor isn't making its way to the United States for a variety of dumb reasons that involve money and the fact that Ford is worried about the Ranger Raptor eating into its big brother's sales. Well, I'm driving around the mountains of Australia
yeah, there you
right
go.
now to
Those
tell you
mountains.
That's a damn shame, because this Ranger Raptor is totally awesome.
Yeah. This might be the most vulgar video I've made, which I think all the vulgarity just happened, so from here on out, we're good. So, all these shots were actually where we stayed, and I'm gonna turn this down a little bit. We stayed at a chalet, and it was just gorgeous. There were animals everywhere, and this off-road section was fairly close by on the shores of Lake Jindabyne. And so we were able to just kind of wheel around all day, every day if we wanted to, for the 4-ish days that we were there. That being said, there were a ton of mountain roads that we also wanted to go on. So I think we spent probably 2 days at this little off-road area. And by little, I mean, I don't know, a few acres. And it wasn't like marked or anything. It was just like, we saw this lake, we saw these trails, it looked awesome, so let's do it.
And it feels like a really smooth ride. This truck is pretty packed to the gills when it comes to our gear, and everything is being held in pretty nicely. We're not being shaken around too much. So much like the F-150 Raptor, the Ranger Raptor...
It's a nice gimbal shot there. Gimbal's 100% necessary, like I said in the last video.
The engineers designed this so that it could handle speeds of over 100 miles per hour while driving off-road.
And so one thing that I didn't mention at the beginning is that for this video, I wrote the story. I was on camera, obviously. Alex was behind the camera most of the time. And then I shot the photos. So there was a lot to go on in 1 week. And to make matters a little more difficult on myself, I only brought one lens with me to shoot the photos with, and that was a 35 millimeter. And I think it turned out pretty well. I'll throw some photos up on the screen here, but you know, next time, I mean, we had all our camera equipment for shooting video, so we did have more lenses than that. But I was really trying to stick to that one focal length just to do something different with the photos. And if I did it again, I'd probably bring, you know, an arsenal of lenses. Though I was very happy with the photos we got.
And we have rock, which is for slower rock crawling. You actually have to be in 4 low in order to use.
So it's interesting when...
The one thing that I wish...
Oh, yeah, let's talk about this drone shot real quick. So the thing that's nice about working for a company like Verizon is that we have software that gives us permits for flying drones wherever, not wherever we want. We can't fly in like national parks or anything like that, but if it's illegal to drive there, we can get permits through our, like, this software that we use. And so if we ever got stopped, it was just like, here you go, printed off the permit, shows on the map where we're able to fly, which was like, we had, you know, chosen everywhere within 12 hours of where we were going to be just to cover our bases, you know, if we wanted to stop on our way to Sydney to do some drone shots. But the drone stuff in this video, I think we did some drone stuff in Japan, and especially in the Jeep Gladiator video, which is a competitor to this guy, is game changer for sure.
It's the morning of day 3. I'm on the shores of Lake Jindabyne. The past few days we've spent driving around the mountains and doing some light off-roading, but today we are going to drive 200 miles back to Sydney.
There we go. Day 3 is when we drove back to Sydney. And I know it was late day 3.
So I mentioned before that the turning radius is something that I don't like about the Ranger Raptor. There really aren't a lot of things I don't like about this truck. But
So driving on the left side of the road was interesting. It was not the first time I've driven on the left side of the road. I've driven in Europe, in England, on the left side of the road. I have driven in, and I've driven in New Zealand on the left side of the road. I have ridden in Japan on the left side of the road. But for some reason, I think because of the size of the truck and the skinny roads in Sydney, man, I kind of struggled a little bit with the left side of the road driving. At least I had to think about it a lot more than I thought I would have to.
211 horsepower and 369 pound-feet of torque. Now that torque is great. I think that's a great number. I think that it feels good with this truck. But when it comes to the horsepower, I think it's severely lacking. We're talking about a truck that is obviously much heavier than, say, something like a Ford Focus ST.
So up until this point, no one at, and I think after this as well, no one at Autoblog had driven this vehicle. So I didn't really have much to go off of. So the first day, as we were driving the 5 hours to the mountains, it was, taking notes. And then when we got to the house that we were staying at, it was just like writing. And so all this in-car stuff, we filmed probably like 2 or 3 different versions of this, because as I drove the truck more, I developed maybe not so different opinions, but I kind of honed my opinion on everything.
This steering wheel is unique to the Ranger Raptor. It has this red leather 12 o'clock indicator so you can quickly see if your steering is straight, which is super helpful. And these paddle shifters feel great in my hand. At first I was a little worried that they were too close to the turn signal. There's still enough room for you to use them pretty easily, though this is a 10-speed transmission, which means if I'm using the paddle shifters, I'm gonna be using...
So you'll see here we got, the GoPro shot up front, and then Alex is shooting again from the passenger seat. And a lot of these passing shots that are in the mountains, we spent like an entire day in the mountains shooting passing shots, which was interesting because the roads there are not quite big enough to turn around, and since it's mountain roads, you have to kind of drive to a spot where you can see both ways pretty well, so you could do kind of like a 5-point turn. So that was an interesting thing to have to do like all day long.
So let's talk about looks. There is a reason that people buy a Ford grille and swap it out on their normal Rangers. The grille on this truck looks fantastic.
These B-roll shots were shot outside the house that we stayed at in the mountains. Phenomenal place. One of the nights we were there, I'll throw up the photo. The sky just looked on fire when the sun was setting. It was incredible. There were wallabies hopping around and kangaroos real close. One thing that I didn't expect was to see so much kangaroo roadkill. Kind of like deer in Michigan, they were kind of everywhere, and man, it just like obviously didn't smell good. Like they were everywhere, and like even the living kangaroos didn't smell great.
I have spent hours and hours in this truck, and as far as comfort, I think I could drive in this truck all day long. The seats are super supportive, and the ride is smooth, but it won't put you to sleep. The only thing I have to worry about when driving this on the road is not
There's some
hitting
kangaroos
walls,
right there.
and staying on the left side. The infotainment system is Sync 3. Not my favorite, not my least favorite. Thankfully, it has Apple CarPlay, and while we've been here, that's all I've been using. One thing I really like about the interior is that it's not filled with buttons. You have a touchscreen up here.
So all this stuff was filmed on that 5-hour drive back to Sydney. And by all this, I mean this specific part, talking about the interior. And that is planned. Kind of like I said in the Volkswagen California video, when you're shooting, you want to get a lot up front. And, And so you want to get a lot up front. You want to get your toughest stuff up front, because once you get the toughest stuff done, you're good to go. Now, here we are on the beach, and that was probably one of the harder days as well. We didn't know where we'd be able to air up the tires, so we didn't air down the tires. And then we got to the end. Obviously, you're driving on sand, you should probably air down your tires. We got to the end, and there was a pump right at the end of the beach where you could drive off the beach onto the road, and we were a little bit bummed about that. There's a shot from Sydney. Didn't have a ton of shots in Sydney. The traffic was, as you would expect, kind of nuts. All right, there we go. So, that was kind of quick. I have a lot to say about that truck. I did say a lot about the truck in the written review and in the video. The beach driving. Let's talk about that since it was kind of at the end. There's a whole other video about beach driving that I will also link below. The beach driving was interesting because at that point we had been in the mountains for 3 days. So we flew to Sydney, drove to the mountains, spent 3 days shooting in the mountains. On the third day, we drove back to Sydney. Interesting place to experience. It's a huge city. I think the Prince Harry and Meghan were there while we were there. So there was some like craziness going on with them being there. At one point, we were walking across the street, and we were in the middle of the street, and we had the walk sign, and all of a sudden it just turned to don't walk, and all the lights turned red. And we were in the middle of the street, so we just like booked it across, and like 2 seconds later, the Royal Motorcade just flew by, a bunch of Range Rovers. Speaking of Range Rovers and cool cars, there was a ton of 70 Series Land Cruisers in Australia. I was like just drooling the entire time. But back to the video. Once we got back to Sydney, we spent a few days in Sydney, realized that like most big cities, Sydney is incredibly congested, and shooting there was, it was not what we wanted it to be. We wanted to get some, city driving shots, and what ended up happening was just being stuck in traffic a lot. We got some night shots, but it just wasn't what we wanted it to be. So we got out the map and decided, all right, instead of trying to shoot another day in the city and kind of take hope that things would change, which probably wouldn't happen, we wanted to drive up the coast to this beach. I believe it's called Stockton Beach, and you can drive along Stockton Beach for, I think it's in between 10 and 20 miles. Probably closer to 10 than it was to 20. And so, got the permit, headed out on the beach, driving along, doing a bunch of shoots, photos, video, all that sort of a thing. We were one of a few people out there. It wasn't a great beach day, not like beach season or anything. And eventually we realized that if we got stuck on this beach, we would have no way to get out. And since we hadn't aired down the tires, I wasn't as confident as I would have liked to be in a situation like this. So we just kind of kept cruising along. Eventually there were some other vehicles around where it was like, okay, not so bad. And got to the end. But driving on the beach that day, definitely one of the highlights of the entire trip. Going from mountains where people go skiing and there was like a bunch of snow to the beach all in like a few days was pretty incredible. But yeah, that's the Ranger Raptor review. I'm gonna stop rambling and let you guys watch the video if you haven't already. Links to all of our Australia content is below. Same with the link to the Volkswagen video and the director's commentary for the Volkswagen video. I hope this was helpful. Just comment below if you'd like to see more of these types of videos while we're all stuck inside. And also comment below like what you would like to hear from me as far as, would you like to hear what gear we use or how long we generally stay in places, though I think I touched on that a little bit. Just anything you'd like to hear from us about how we shoot these videos. Be awesome and stay healthy out there.